Automation nation, automation, automation nation, automation, automation nation, around the nation, automation, automation nation, automation, automation nation, automation, automation nation, around the nation. Welcome to the Automation Nation podcast, the show for business leaders, tech aficionados, and those who are just simply curious about where technology and business are going. Automation Nation is your gateway to understanding automation, AI, and the future of business. Don't get left behind. Tune in now and subscribe for more. Welcome to the Automation Nation podcast. Coming back again. The show for business leaders. Oh yeah, swinging back again for a second round. We all like two intros, and nothing like a double intro. Welcome to the Automation Nation show podcast, everybody, wherever you're from. We are live now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we will be on all those podcast stations after we upload it. So wherever you are listening, thank you. And wherever you're watching, thank you. And remember, ask any question you want. The worst question is the one that you should have asked, but you didn't ask, and it really caused you havoc. We got a great guest today on the Automation Nations podcast. We like to bring people in who can share some insight. Jody, I've been watching some of your content, and I think there's some power in insight, and then even more power when people can do something with it that empower themselves and their businesses. And we're talking about automating. We're talking about adding AI and technology into the things we're doing. And who better than Jody Padar? I asked her in the beginning, like, how do you pronounce your name? And she said, like, radar. And I love that because she is cued in. Jody, welcome to the Automation Nation podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I'm excited because I know our conversation is going to, I love that word, enlighten. When I think of the word enlighten, I think of light. So I think first you have dark, then you have light. I think you have the right insight. You can enlighten people and turn the light on. So we're going to turn the light on for any folks who are listening today. Before we kick this off, you know, Automation Nation is powered by Simply Automation. We love to ask this question. If you could simply automate one thing in your personal life, Jody, what would it be?
The dishes.
Bing,
could
bing,
I
bing.
automate doing the dishes? Is there a robot that could do that for me?
Coming in 2025. That's a good one. Yeah. And you know what? That is like the top answer between the dishes and really anything around the house that you have to do. Somebody said laundry. The dishes and laundry. We can get those two things together. It'll be nice.
Well, we do have the robot vacuum thing, so who knows? Maybe it's coming, you know?
Don't blink, folks. Don't blink. Jody, you are the radical CPA. So, you know, first of all, I like that name. That's wonderful. Why don't you let people know what is the radical CPA? Oh, wait, before I do that, let me I like your bio. I typically don't read bios, but I saw your bios. Oh, this is pretty good. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but just the opening, and then after that, you can kind of share about the radical CPA. So this is Jody's LinkedIn. You can find it under the about. So I've been described as a feeling leader, someone who is driven by passion to foster real change in the accounting profession. My path started in the tax department of a mid-sized public accounting firm. Since then, my experiences leading my own firm, New Vision, and the transformational radical CPA, which is hashtag movement, have inspired me to look for what's next. Now, when I ran the New Vision CPA group, I learned through trial and error, I love this, how to implement innovative best practices for processes and technology. I love how you said through error, okay? Sometimes you learn the hard way, you said. We pioneered full business solutions that would later become known as advisory, but to us, it was just the way we did things. The focus was never on the failures, only the lessons learned. Now, that is quotable, okay? It's not about the failures, only about the lessons learned, because that's what wisdom really is, folks, when we get down to it. It's the lessons you learn from the experiences. The last line here, the lessons paved the way for the radical CPA, a movement that began with just a few forward-thinking accountants. One of them sitting right here. Jody, talk about it. How did you get here?
Okay, yeah,
let's talk about that.
So the radical CPA, like, it dates me, right? But like 15 years ago, think 2008, 2009, 2010, right? Social was just beginning. Like they didn't even, like Twitter had just started. Like, and what happened is I left this old school firm and I joined my dad. I started my own firm basically. And I started to use something called the cloud, but they didn't call it the cloud back then. It was just the internet, right? And with the internet came all these new tools. And because I really had very little to lose, I jumped in utilizing these new tools with my customers, like my CPA customers, right? And what I realized, it wasn't about the tool, it was about how the tool changed how you interacted with your customer. So all of a sudden there was a different level of how you interacted with that CPA client, that small business owner, right? Like how you were going to serve them. And the big difference was real time, right? So like in the old school ways, you like did work, you reviewed work, and then you talked to the client. In the online world, all of a sudden everything was in real time, and you had to change the way your firm ran because your customer could I'll say catch you and not having something done correctly because it wasn't reviewed. So it fundamentally changed the way I ran my business as a small firm owner. I went to Twitter because where did you go those again? Like there was no one to teach me how to do this. So I went to Twitter and I met a handful of other forward-thinking accounting professionals around the country who were doing similar things and utilizing these new tools and trying to figure it out. And when we were doing it, we were really the radicals because every other firm owner, I mean, think about this 15 years ago, whatever, every other firm owner didn't even want to move to the cloud. They didn't want to put their data on the internet, right? Like they were so old school that we banded together on Twitter and we ended up meeting up at a conference, and the AIC coined us a movement. And that's where like kind of this radical brand stuck. Now, fast forward, that was the cloud, the internet, I'll say regular kind of newer technologies of 2010, right? That's what the firm of the future is happening today. I did it years ago. Now, radical is what's next. It's pushing AI and data analytics and kind of where the profession is going. Because I'm always like, we're like 10 years, I don't want to say 10 years, but I'm always way ahead of where everybody else is. So if everybody else is kind of doing what I was doing 10 years ago, like I have to push the boundaries, and that's what radical is to me. And that's what the brand radical is. And it's always changing. It's always evolving. But the thing about radical that I think is important to me and makes me so passionate about sharing it is it's about getting a better life for a CPA firm owner or an accounting firm owner. Because if you think about it, we spend so much time doing the mundane tasks that could be automated that we work 60 hours a week. We work way too much. And what I realized by putting automation in my firm so many years ago is it gave me my life back. It allowed me to have a profitable business and work a lot less. So you could automate and use it to make more money, or you could automate it to go home early. And I like kind of automating it to go home early.
I like automating it to get home early too. You know, people are waiting for me at home. Well, sometimes I'm already at home, but I'm in my room because that's the office these days.
To be engaged.
Point is,
yeah.
Point is, you're right though, Jody. It's by automating some of these things. I did a post a couple weeks ago of a gentleman holding a present gift, and he's an accountant leaving work early with the gift heading home, and it's the sign of the accountant who's automating things because now he doesn't have the hours and hours, he or she doesn't have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of manual, very important things to do. Jody, let's talk about this. I know there was a moment. When was that moment for you that, I mean, it sounds like you've always been a forward thinker, but can we go back to the genesis, maybe when this all really started for you, like transform from really the realization coming to birth.
So it was, again, when I started my firm, it was kind of iterating through the cloud, right? That was the first thing. Because again, you can't do AI and data until you're in the cloud. So there's so many firms that still aren't even in the cloud. And don't tell me you're in the cloud if you have a hosted desktop on, that's not the cloud. Having a hosted QuickBooks on someone else's Citrix desktop. That's not the cloud, right? Like you can't do all the cool things with AI and data if you're still sitting on someone else's desktop. So let's talk about what's really like automation, right? Like I think there's a big disconnect in the profession. Right. People say, "Oh, they're in the cloud." Well, you have a hosted desktop. Again, that's you don't get the power. You get a little bit, but you don't get the full ability to do all the things that you want until you're truly in the cloud, right? And that's what automate. And so I would say I was doing it like 2008, like again, like early, right? But then right before the pandemic, 2 years before the pandemic, I really started to kind of take this technology turn and really start working with startups and really understanding more of the tech behind it. Whereas before I was in the accounting and I worked with product a lot to say, oh, I want I want the tool to do this, right? And they would listen to me and they would, because again, most product people want to be where the tool is going, right? So they are looking for those forward thinkers. But then kind of maybe 2 years before the pandemic, I started working with BotKeeper. I started working with Trillian. I started working with some of the other technology companies. And I really learned the guts of the tech and why it works that way. I went back to school. I took an accounting for analytics class that if you're my age, you were never exposed to. But if you were graduating with an accounting degree today, you have to have that as to how all the data fits together, which is a huge disconnect in our profession. And so I would say a little, like I became more of I've always been practice management, but I really started to understand more of the depth of what was possible. And then once you understand that, then you can really, I'll say, decide what you want the tools to do. And then you can like, I don't say tell an engineer, but then like you can say, look, I want it to do this. And then they can tell you how long it's going to take them, and it's really bigger than you think it is, right? Like that's the big thing, like this but I just wanted to do this and you think it's no big deal, and then that's 6 months of work to do that. No. So but I started to really understand the guts of what you could do with technology because I started working with engineers and technologists, which was a different perspective. So I would say that kind of changed about 5 years ago. Which is good because it like kind of rounded me out, right? Like you have the person who does the work, and now like you understand more of the people who are trying to solve the problem of the work that the accountants want done.
So you're getting a much broader perspective and understanding. That's helpful. That's very helpful, I would say. What would you? So I mean, there's a bright future for those who can see it. But how do you envision the future of accounting with this? So we're starting to adopt this. We're at the beginning phase right here, right? So we call it early adoption, and then that hasn't even really started. So we're like pre-early adoption. But how do you envision the future?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, even though we're in the early stages, there's a lot of AI happening behind the scenes that you don't even realize is happening because like they don't say, oh, this is AI. They just created a tool that fixes a problem that you had. So like, don't be freaked out by these words because the technologists are really going to solve a lot of the problems that accountants have or small businesses have. And they're not even going to, they might use it a little bit in their marketing, but they're not going to like tout it because to them it's just a tool, right? So I think that's the first thing, like to level set around is like don't be freaked out about it. And it's already happening. There's AI in things that you just don't even realize it's in. I I think the other thing is we don't know what we don't know yet. I think our jobs are going to change significantly, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a change. And if you think about the social media, and again, this is me, like, who started playing with social media 2008, 2009, and all the marketers were freaked out. Social media was going to take their jobs, blah, blah, blah. Now there's a whole industry. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry with creators using social media to like do things, right? There's all these marketing positions that are based in social media that it just evolves marketing to a different level. And so I think that's the way we need to look at like kind of these new technologies and not be freaked out that they're going to take our jobs, but just be more open to the fact that our jobs are going to change. The other thing is they should give us the opportunity to not be so concerned about getting it right because you know it's going to be right, and to actually be able to do the advisory that sits on top of it, which is where we should play. Like if you went to school for all these years, it wasn't to do a bank reconciliation. It was to look at the numbers and help small business owners make sense of those numbers, right? So it should give us time to actually do the advisory work that I think small business owners crave, but their accountants are just so busy heads down trying to get the numbers right that they don't have time to like actually have a bigger impact. So we should be thinking about it in terms of the impact that it's going to give us to help our customers be successful. Because I think that's what CPAs want to do, right? Like most accounting firms, if you ask them why they went into business, they say, yeah, they like numbers, but more importantly, they say, I love helping people, or I love my clients, or I like helping my clients. And that's what the way we should look at technology is a way for us to help our clients more.
Technology is a way for us to help our clients more. That rolls right into the next question, which was, how is it going to impact the day-to-day, accountants and bookkeepers? You kind of said it, but it's embracing the technology to be able to do what you actually are fired up to do, and that's help people. And that you can only do that if you can talk to them. You can only talk to them if you have time to do that.
Right. And the technology, if you look at it, and it's already here today. So like, this is not the stuff I'm talking about is not like in the future. It's in GLs already. Like, let's say you have 400 transactions, AI can categorize, 390 of them. And then the accountant only has to double check 10 of them, right? Because it didn't know what to do. It kicks the error, right? That's what AI does, or a lot of people, machine learning does that. Actually, a lot of people don't understand it. Is what it does is it looks at it from a statistical probability and it kicks the thing that doesn't look right. And so it can get, depending on the model, 80 to 90%, whatever, it gets a certain percentage right. And it just knows that it's correct. And we see that in QuickBooks Online already when it automatically categorizes something for us, right? But it means as an accountant, you're only going to be looking at 10 transactions instead of 400, which again, if you only have to look at 10 transactions to kind of figure out the weird ones, then like that makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. So much easier because you have more bandwidth. Right. You have that's where it comes. People are very stressed out unknowingly because they run out of bandwidth. And so it's a subconscious thing. You're not even realizing how much attention you have to spend on something. But when you get that attention back, that's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about some advice for some young professionals entering the accounting space and in this new era. So if you entered into this space of accounting, 20 years ago, it is light years different than today. I'm almost like hunter and gatherers to today.
Yeah. So what kind of so I think the big thing is to realize that, like, when you think about data and the data classes that you've taken at school, the partners in your firm don't understand it, and you need to be that bridge to help them understand it. And you also need to understand from their perspective that they have years of experience and they can look at that data and make a lot of connections on it that you just don't have insight to because you don't have that depth of knowledge. So whatever you can do to kind of bridge the gap between kind of, I'll say Gen Z or like the next gen, and the boomers and Gen X to help them understand the technology transformation is going to make you a rock star in your firm, in your corporate environment, wherever you are, because there's value in having both, and you need both to really be successful as an organization. And the people who can make that bridge happen are going to be the rock stars. So so I would say learn whatever you can about data and automation, but then don't keep it to yourself. Help the older professionals have it apply, because I think, again, the hard part is sometimes you have all these data whizzes come out of school and they look at the data, but they don't have the context to understand why it makes sense in the market. And until they connect to the experienced professional, that data means nothing. So.
I like that. Learn what you can learn and then see how you can apply that. You learn what you can learn, then see how you can actually apply that and help your firm and who you're working with. You're right. Education is power. Well, education is like knowledge is power, but really only when you use it. So you're right. Research it, understand it, and then help implement it. All right. So here's our second simply question of the day. And this is interesting for someone like you who automates everything, but maybe there's something you haven't yet. If there's one thing you could simply automate in your business life, and this is magic wand time now, people. You are whatever you say, it comes to pass. What would that be if you could automate one thing? Simply automate one thing in your business life right now. What would that be?
So I haven't, and there's probably a way to do it. I just haven't figured it out. If there was a way to update my calendar and update like all our calendars. So like, as opposed to like, going to my phone and setting up an event and whatever. But if I could just say schedule event, blah, 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 and have it just work. And maybe there's a way to do it already. And I just don't know how to do it. But to me, that would be amazing.
Wow. That sounds like a chat GPT and Calendly thing right there.
Right.
That
Or Zapier, I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. That's cool. That was a good one. Because then you could just, and I love just speaking. I love the fact that the mic was added to whatever we need to accomplish. Because I speak text messages, I speak into ChatGPT, I speak into my Google documents. Because my thoughts come out.
Have you played with Pi yet? Have you?
I have not.
Okay, so that's the be all and end all to me of like, it's better than ChatGPT. She's your personal assistant. And it's PI, like, like the number pi, whatever. And you can ask her all kinds of things and she talks back to you and she gives you like caring responses. It's the Alexa you wanted. So check her out. It's pretty cool. You could ask her all kinds of random things and she comes back to you and she's very empathetic and she tells you like she has empathy, which I don't think ChatGPT has.
Wow, that's interesting. And I know empathy was built because Google did something like 10 years ago. And it was just...
you could talk to her about like the tomatoes in your garden, that like about how they keep falling over. Because that was like one of the conversations that I had with her this summer, that my tomato plants kept falling over, and her responses were amazing. It was like my best friend. I didn't even have to call anyone else. It was like she empathized with my tomato plants.
Wow. Okay, so make sure you check out Pi, everybody. It's not a pie in the sky. Check it out. That's very interesting. Very interesting. All right, Jody. So how can, this is big, how can accounting firms really, and really any business, but let's talk about accounting firms balance like the efficiency of like adding technology, but then also that human element, because this is a big thing, and humans are scared of the technology because they're afraid of what it could take their jobs or things of that nature, or they're afraid because they just don't understand it. It's like when you don't understand something, you run from it, right? So like what's a good way to balance this for our leaders?
So I think this comes to culture, and I think this is the hardest part that firms don't have. So you have to put innovation into your DNA. And you have to put into that iteration and the ability to try things and to fail at them. And you also, and here's the problem with it, and I'll say that when you have a new firm and you don't have a lot of clients, you have low risk. So you can do a lot of innovation and changing because like you don't have like this big book of business that you're afraid to lose. When you start to get more established, which most firms are today, and you have this legacy book, it's how do you help them evolve? So I think the big thing is to change it in your culture, to know that innovation just becomes part of your culture. And all large organizations have it. It's not like, this is not unique to accounting firms or like anyone, right? But then also realize that not everything shiny and new has to be changed, because otherwise you'll go through this like crazy spinning things and you'll always be going for what's next. And there are a lot of solid automations that have been around for forever that work fine and you don't need to change them. And then I think the last piece of it is you don't just put new technology on an old process. You have to really dig into what the process is before you even apply the technology and work together, because otherwise it's just expensive technology on a broken process. Or I'll say in most CPA firms today, it's expensive technology on a broken business model because it's systemic in nature.
Ooh, you don't want to automate an issue.
Yeah. So I have a really good example of that. So there was an 88, or there was an extension. I think it was an extension. And the extension goes out. Let's say you're in a tax firm, right? And you have to file an extension for a business return, and it basically just gets filed. It doesn't go anywhere, right? And the way it's connected through the e-file system is through like a digital number, right? So like that's how you prove that your extension was filed, is you go into your tax software and you pull that number to prove that that extension was filed. So a large firm, a top 100 firm, I think it was even a top 50 firm, who has lots and lots of money, and they wanted to automate the process. So they took the old process where you used to print the extension form and then manually put it with each file. So they used to have admins printing it to PDF and then taking that PDF and moving it to the client file. Most of the time, that extension is never looked at again. If you do need to do something with that extension, that printed PDF of that extension is worthless anyways, because it doesn't have the digital signature to say that it was filed with the IRS, right? In the old days, you used to go to, this dates me, you used to go to the post office and they used to stamp datum. So that was how you knew, like you could prove to the IRS that this extension was filed on time. So a large firm spent lots and lots of money to automate this process of basically moving a PDF around so the admins didn't have to do it. And in reality, they didn't even need that process anymore. They could have just eliminated it completely. They could have said, the assumption was the extension was filed. If you had a question of it, you went and you looked it up in the digital system. You didn't just basically go to this printed PDF that wasn't valid anyways. And so that's a really good example of people automating something and not looking at a process. And then they're like, and then it's like they get to the end and they're like, well, this was stupid. Like then they realize, like, and some of them never do realize it. Some of them like say like, oh my God, look what we did. And I'm like, why are you even doing that? Right? Like you don't need it. Why do you need that printed PDF that's not valid anyways? It has no digital, I guess, I don't know, watermark on it, whatever you want to call it, the number that the IRS sends back with it.
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness. Due diligence is important. Yeah, that's huge. That can save you some heartache, time, and stress and money and all the kind of things. Just do your due diligence. You're right. Spend some time understanding what you're doing. Make sure you have the right intelligence. Make sure you're working with the right technological team too. Make sure do your due diligence on that, because you want to have somebody who can help you understand what you need to accomplish, and so that then you can then formulate a nice plan to execute. Let's do this, Jody. Let's give the folks a nugget of wisdom. We turn this into a quotable, by the way. I'm going to send it to you. Next wonderful picture of the quote. One nugget of wisdom you can share with the audience about automation and business. You shared nuggets. You already shared. There's nuggets all over the place. But okay.
I think it's about embracing it and not being afraid of it and being curious and always be learning, because whatever we talk about today is not going to be relevant in 6 months, 3 months, whatever, because the automation is changing so fast. So like you have to have your learning on, like you always have to have your learning on and just be open to learning about whatever the new automation is. But again, not to be like taken advantage of by all the shiny new objects, right? Like there's got to be a balance. But I think that's the thing, that because people are like, oh, I learned it, and then they forget that a year later it's different or it's changed. And then I think the other thing is you can't wait to do it. You always have to be iterating and again putting that innovation into your DNA, that you always have to keep your eyes open for kind of what's around you, what's happening around you, because otherwise you'll look up and you'll be left behind.
I like that. Always look for innovation. And I like you also said, always be learning. Always, because you never know. You don't know what you don't know. Right. And sometimes they say what you don't know is what can really hurt you. So, the only way to do that is to explore. Jody, thank you for being on the show and having this conversation. You have some things going on, and I want people to be able to plug in, get connected to your work. Definitely follow up whether you're wherever you're watching this or listening. Jody's information will be in either the comments, description, somewhere. I know LinkedIn is where you spend a lot of time. Yeah. I see a lot of your posts. But why don't you share with everyone like what you have going on? I know there's an event coming up. Share that, and then also how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so the easiest way to catch me is on social. So just connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible. That's something that I'm proud of. And then I do have an event next Tuesday on LinkedIn, and it's been posted on my LinkedIn, so you can get all the details there. I have a book coming out January, February that is called Radical Pricing. It's going to be kind of again, how firms need to kind of change their pricing models. It's new business models, and it takes into account technology, customer experience, all the things that I've been talking about for years, but it's really kind of tangible to kind of help you make sense of it, right? Like it's not just like theory. And that's one of the things that I think I'm proud of is that I kind of iterated through all of this with my own firm. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm happy to share those mistakes.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing your mistakes. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. And thank you everyone for watching and listening. And listen, again, the dumbest question is the one that's not asked that you needed the answer to. John Maxwell says, and I always say this, the best questions get the best answers. So get those questions together. Technology is moving quick, but you don't have to get left behind. You can shorten your learning curve, and you can do things better. Just get around people who are doing that. Jody, thank you for being here, and thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Until next time.